Hey guys, how's it going? It's Danconia, and welcome back to the Overwatch League Transfer Roundup 2019. Is it 2019? I suppose it is 2019. I can't call it 2020 because we're not in 2020 yet. Anyway, moving on. We've got some more transfers to go through, and I want to keep up to date with it because the teams have to have at least 8 players signed by the 15th of November. So there's going to be a few of these transfer roundups coming out now. London are very close to announcing their roster, I think. They've put a few teasers out there, but we've got a lot more to talk about than that. I apologise if I'm a bit pausy in this video. I'm ill, so just bear with me. I don't sound ill, but I am ill. We left off last time at OGE and the transfer from Dallas to the LA Gladiators. In return, the Dallas Fuel got DK, the South Korean DPS player. Now, there's been a lot of rumours around agilities. Obviously, we saw him at the World Cup. Not for too long, but yeah, we saw him at the World Cup. And we had already covered that he had been let go by the LA Valiant. He is now moving back to Canada to play for the Toronto Defiant. The Toronto Defiant roster that's being set up here is actually really interesting. We'll go through some more later on. But Toronto Defiant, it's going to be an interesting team. Very hard team to predict next season. Moving on, we have the Seoul Dynasty. Now, Cheng Goon, who was signed by the Seoul Dynasty last year in the off-season from London Spitfire. Cheng Goon was the London Spitfire winning, Overwatch League winning London Spitfire coach for the 2018 season. While he was an assistant coach at Seoul Dynasty last year, he has been re-signed by the Seoul Dynasty as head coach. I think that's a pretty good move by Seoul. I really think Cheng Goon is a really, really good coach. So that should be really cool. Also, 2 more movements by the Seoul Dynasty. Creative, the support from Gen G, and MMA, the coach from Gen G, have been promoted from Gen G to Seoul Dynasty. If you didn't know, Gen G are the organisers of Seoul Dynasty and their academy team in South Korea. So, moving on. The Guangzhou Charge have let go of a strategic coach, Curry Shot. Again, Toronto Defiant come up again. They have let go of the DPS player, Ivy. He has gone to the Philadelphia Fusion. There's a lot of Philadelphia Fusion coming up because they have made some big signings. And the next one, in my opinion, is the biggest. Another loss for the London Spitfire. It's the off-tank Fury. Now, London Spitfire fans weren't happy about this. He is now a Philadelphia Fusion player. Fury is a big loss. I think we all know how good Fury is. I mean, London have now lost Prophet and Fury. I think that's, their 2 biggest players. Let's be honest, they could cope with the loss of Gesture and that, but it looks like London are going for an entirely new roster, pretty much. So, it's going to be a very different looking 2018 champions next season. Anyway, moving on, we have more for the Philadelphia Fusion. So, the UK support player who played at the World Cup, best known for his Lucio, who was a 2-way player for the Atlanta Reign and the ATL Academy, Funny Astro, has now left Atlanta. He will be playing in Philadelphia next year for the Philadelphia Fusion. This should be really interesting, because looking at Overwatch right now, it doesn't look like we're going to get... The meta's not shifting at the moment. So, if the meta stays as it is, Funny Astro could be a really important player for the Philadelphia Fusion next season, as Lucio should be pretty prominent in the meta with double shield. That should be really interesting. Now we have a lot of involvement from Philadelphia Fusion and the Fusion University. So, Alarm, who was a support for the Fusion University in South Korea, believe it or not. Yeah, I know, that whole saga. He has been promoted to the Philadelphia Fusion first team roster now. And EQO, who was allowed to explore other options, has now been re-signed by the Philadelphia Fusion, which I think is a fantastic move. I really couldn't understand why Philadelphia Fusion would be letting EQO go. Now, more news involving the Fusion University, but this time it is concerning their tank player, Bernard, and their support player, Fuse. They have been signed by the London Spitfire. Interesting. Now, Bernard seems to be a direct replacement for Fury. Bernard is an off-tank player, well known for his D.Va, Zarya and Roadhog. I assume he has a pretty good Sigma. He has done really well for Fusion University in the past, but when Fusion University moved to Korean contenders from NA contenders, they hit the ground running. They went through trials pretty well, but then when they came up against the big boys like Runaway, Element Mystique, and O2 Blast and the likes, they kind of got a bit stuck, and they didn't make it to the gauntlet. They didn't make it through the contenders playoffs or anything. So, this is an interesting one. Again, London look to be going for fairly young players. Bernard is 19. When we look at Fuse is 20. He is a support player. He mainly plays Lucio and Mercy, so he's a main support pretty much. Again, he has a history at Fusion University, at Gen G, at MVP Space. He's been around the Korean contenders scene, but hasn't really been at the top of it. So again, it seems to me as if London are trying to stitch together a super roster of unknowns, if you see what I mean. It'll be interesting to see where they go with it, and this is by no means, I don't think, the marquee signings that London are going to bring out. We haven't seen any more yet, so we wait and see for the London Spitfire. But moving on for the Spitfire, we have Beast, or more affectionately known, Beast Halo. The tank player has moved from the Fusion University to the Toronto Defiant. Again, Toronto Defiant, building a really interesting roster here. It's going to be interesting to see how all this kind of knits together for Toronto. But they really could be a meme team in 2020. Moving on, and Toronto have let go of Neko to support though. And then we stumble upon the LA Valiant, who made quite a few signings. Now, they have signed the tank player Dreamer. Now, Dreamer is a really interesting player. He originates in South Korea, but has been playing for Sydney Drop Bears. The interesting thing about Dreamer is he's not just a tank player. He's a tank support hybrid player. He can play the main tank, the Reinhardt, the Winston, but he can also play the Lucio, the Anna, the Mercy. I have never seen, and I don't think there is a player in the Overwatch League like this. So, it'll be interesting to see how he does. Again, a relatively unknown name, maybe a backup for the LA Valiant going into next season. But he looks like a really good backup, right? And there's a discussion to be had around how rosters will look next season. That'll be for another video, because things really might change next season. Next up for the LA Valiant is Apply. Apply is a US DPS player, only 19 still. He was at Revival before joining the LA Valiant. He's also had a spell at the Florida Mayhem. Now, again, it's not the highest profile of signings, but Apply could be a really good flex projectile DPS. He's well known for his Genji, his Pharah, his Junkrat. He can also play the Brigitte, but most DPS players can, unfortunately, and Zarya. So, again, a decent signing for LA Valiant. There's a lot of teams going for some less well-known players. And the next one, even I hadn't heard of, and I come from the Blue country that he comes from. This is Slur. He is from the United Kingdom, and he is a support player. He will be playing for the LA Valiant next season. He plays mainly a Zen, a Mercy, and a Moira. Moira pretty hot on the meta right now. He comes from Samsung Morning Stars in EU contenders. He also has played for Shoes Money Crew. Slur is an interesting signing, caught me off guard. Nice to see another UK representative in the Overwatch League. And then the last one in this little list of LA Valiant players is Lastro. Lastro is a South Korean support player, well known for his Zenyatta. He's only 18 years old, which is pretty cool, and they have signed him from Sky Foxes in North American contenders. Again, another interesting signing, and it's kind of a mishmash of people that LA Valiant are bringing together here, so it'll be interesting to see how they work out together when they get on stage. The LA Gladiators, moving to the other side of LA, have signed a strategic coach in Curry Shot. Some moves for the Atlanta Reign next then, and they have promoted basically two players. One from the ATL Academy, who is Hawk. He is a tank player. He's been moved to the full roster. And then Gator, who was a two-way player last season, he has been promoted to the full roster as well. So more Americans for the Atlanta Reign. Moving on, and we have Seoul Dynasty in action again. They have released a coach, Why Not, and the support player, Jexay. Not too surprised by this. But now it's time for some meaty signings. Okay, there has been a big saga going on about Surefour, and we finally know where he will be playing next season. Take a guess. He'll be playing in Canada. Toronto Defiant have signed Surefour from the LA Gladiators. Big signing for the Toronto Defiant. By far, on paper, their best looking DPS player. And if they can get Surefour to pop off, then they are sure to be a force to be reckoned with next season. I think it'll be interesting to see how this Toronto Defiant roster gel together. Again, that's for a preview video of the Toronto Defiant. It's coming in a few months or something. But it'll be interesting to see what goes on there. Then we have Gamsu. Long rumoured to be leaving the Shanghai Dragons, and indeed that has happened. He is joining up with the Dallas Fuel, which reignites a partnership between Note and Gamsu, which we saw at the Boston Uprising in 2018. That was a pretty successful tank duo, so Dallas might be onto something here, and it seems like a pretty decent replacement for OG. Then we have the LA Gladiators. Now, they've got to replace Surefour, so what are they going to do? Well, there is a certain ex-London Spitfire DPS that is looking for a team. He has a 2018 Winners Medal in his back pocket. Yes, of course, it's Birdring. The LA Gladiators signed Birdring. Now, Birdring is an interesting one, because Birdring didn't have the most brilliant of seasons last season, but in 2018 he was phenomenal. So if the LA Gladiators can get the best out of Birdring, they've got a heck of a player on their hands, especially Hitscan with the Widowmaker and all that. So again, it'll be a case of waiting and seeing what happens when he gets on stage for Birdring, in my opinion. And then we have the Toronto Defiant / Montreal Rebellion, if you want to be funny about it. Team manager for the Toronto Defiant, new team manager, is All Bless. He is also assistant coach for the Montreal Rebellion. Nice to see a lot of intertwining between the Toronto Defiant and the Montreal Rebellion, their academy team. It's a pretty good way to go. Then we move on to the Boston Uprising. Another 2 promotions here from their academy team, from the Uprising Academy. We have Swimmer. Swimmer has been promoted to the Boston Uprising. He is a support player. Swimmer is an amazing story. In, I believe, Season 4, he was at 1500 SR, or nearly 1600 SR. He is now an Overwatch League player. If that is not Path to Pro at its finest, I don't know what is. Truly, Swimmer is an inspiration to us all, and he just shows that anyone can reach the Overwatch League if they really put their mind to it. Now, moving on, we have Muffin. I talked about him during the Canadian preview and the Canadian collapse video for the Overwatch World Cup. He's an off-tank player, Canadian, been playing for the Uprising Academy. He is now promoted as a 2-way player, so he can play for the Uprising Academy and a bit for the Boston Uprising if they need him. Then, we've got Aim God. Aim God was let go by, yes, the Boston Uprising, and now he has been signed by the Washington Justice. I think that's a pretty good pickup for the Washington Justice. I think, honestly, he was, I believe, on paper, kind of Boston's best support, and they kind of fell apart when they started mucking around with things. Aim God, I think, is a really good player, and I think he's a really good pickup for the Washington Justice. Another pickup for the Toronto Defiant then, and this is Nevix. Nevix is the only player let go by the San Francisco Shock this year, or so far anyway, and I don't think San Francisco Shock are going to be losing anyone else. He's an off-tank player well known around the Overwatch scene. Nevix is going to be staying in the Overwatch League this year. He will be playing for the Toronto Defiant. And then we have Wizard Chong. He was let go by the Washington Justice earlier on in this transfer window. And I was kind of surprised by it, considering he had a really good history with NYXL. Now, he has been picked up by a team in the league. Yes, it's Seoul Dynasty. Seoul Dynasty have picked him up as a strategic coach. Him, partnered with Chengun and the rest of the Seoul Dynasty coaching team. Oh, watch out for Seoul next season, and then the signings they've made. Oh, watch out for Seoul next season. I am scared of that team. The only team coming for Korea, they want to put on a show at their hometown, right? And they are really going to do that, I think, with the signings and changes they've made. I think we could be looking at a really, really powerful Seoul Dynasty next year for the first time in the Overwatch League since basically Seoul were lunatic high. Moving on, and we come to the Shanghai Dragons. Shanghai Dragons have let go of Coma. Now, I'm going to have a talk about Coma in a few videos' time, maybe. I think this is slightly surprising. I think Coma's a really decent support player, and I think he might get picked up by another Overwatch League team. But he will not be playing for the Shanghai Dragons next season. He is currently unassigned. Then for the Shanghai Dragons, we have Dia, one of their Chinese players. He has been changed slightly. His contract's been changed slightly. He is now a 2-way player for Shanghai Dragons and their academy team, Team CEC. And now we move on to the Washington Justice again. A development coach has been signed. That's Supreme. And Wiz has been signed as a strategic coach from the XL2 Academy. 2 more Korean coaches coming in for the Washington Justice. See where it's going here. Okay, the rest, we've got 3 more to go through, and they're all players being let go by teams. So Houston Outlaws have let go of the Canadian support Banny. yeah, this is harsh. Like, I don't know whether Banny wanted to continue on the league or not. It would be nice to see him picked up. Maybe Toronto Defiant, considering he's Canadian. It wouldn't surprise me, but I don't know. Nothing rumoured, nothing confirmed. So, just me spitballing. And then we have 2 let go from the Atlanta Reign. This is Dako, the off-tank player, and then Enlea, the Russian DPS player. Enlea, he had a good World Cup though, so Enlea might get picked up by someone else. Dako always looked good, and the Atlanta Reign looks good when Dako was in the team, right? And when Atlanta Reign had a bit of a dip in form midway through the season, it was when Dako was kind of missing. So I think Dako might be picked up by someone else, but again, you never know. He might drop down to contenders, he might go back to Korea. It depends on personal circumstances sometimes with these players. But that is us caught up. These transfers are correct as of about 10 PM on November the 10th. So don't bite my head off if any more transfers happen between now and when the video goes up. There's nothing I can do about it. I will be back for another one of these though, because doubtless we will get more transfers as London Spitfire are rumouring that they're picking up someone from a Panda Academy team. Work that one out. But I'm going to leave it here. So, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in the next video. See you then.